Hi, this is Dan from Word of the Horde. This is an extract from That Famous Podcast, our podcast where we discuss all sorts of random crap. This is a discussion about Dark, the whole season of Dark from on Netflix. Netflix is Dark, Netflix, Dark. Yeah, you know what I mean? The one about time travel. Yeah, anyway, that's it. We have a complete season discussion after we've both seen it. So I'm putting it up now. It's only like a year late. It's about time travel, you know? It's not late at all. Anyway, enjoy it. There we go.
Hey, we're here.
Welcome. Yes, finished Dark.
Finished Dark, yeah. To be honest, the last 2 days have been Dark orientated for me, so it's been pretty deep dive into the Dark
Imagine,
universe.
for you, it's been a time travel wonderland for the last 3 days of head melting.
It's been a bit of a head melt. That's what I was going to say. Yeah, the first season wasn't too bad because I'd seen some of it, and although I definitely forgot, I would say 80% of it.
Yeah,
full characters and like full arcs and all sorts of stuff. I was just like, oh yeah, that guy's that, and I didn't realize till like they revealed it, and I'm like, oh, I forgot about that. But yeah, the second and third season. Second season wasn't too bad to watch. Third season was tough. I feel like I definitely missed bits on the third season. There was definitely some weird bits, and then I'm like, but that person, I'm trying to follow it, and then like, because they use too many names, and the names aren't like everyday names, which makes it somehow harder to remember who the fuck they're talking about.
Yeah,
I mentioned someone, I'm like, so who's that?
Tronte,
Yeah,
like,
Chauncey, Chauncey,
right.
and whatever is like
Whoever his wife was called.
yeah.
They never got her name.
Oh fuck knows.
Ulrich's mother.
Ulrich's mother, yeah, exactly. And yeah, like say, and Noah and his sister, when they mentioned them, I'm like, is that Noah? Is that Noah then? No, I don't know what the
Yeah,
fuck's
Noah
going
and
on.
Agnes, yeah.
Agnes, yeah.
Yeah, because Noah has a different name. It was like Tano or something. It's like,
Yeah,
just
something like that. Yeah, and I'm like, all right.
stop having two names.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't make it any easier, does it? Two names, three different versions of himself, and yeah, and like even that dude with the cleft lip in the third season. Spoilers.
Didn't even have a name.
He didn't have a name, and it just took me ages to figure out who he was. And even when they revealed who he was, I'm like, so, and I kind of forgot already straight away. And I'm like, so who's he again? Like, they didn't really kind of discuss who he was in depth. They were just like, oh, he's that guy.
Yeah, they were just like, he is the origin or whatever the fuck it was.
He's the origin, yeah. Which I assume is the child of those. I don't know. I don't really understand it entirely.
Yeah, he was the child. He's the child of Jonas and Martha, and then
And Martha, right?
and he ends up marrying or having sex with Agnes Nielsen, the sister of Noah.
Right.
She ends up giving birth to like Tronte, and then blah blah blah, and then it all goes down the line to everyone existing.
Right.
The way it was, I think.
Right. That.
No, yeah, that's
I think. Yeah.
my understanding of it.
No, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I didn't.
Paused it on the map. Yeah, spoilers. Fucking spoil. Forget it.
Oh, massive, gigantic spoilers.
Just accept.
And they still won't make sense, even if there were spoilers. Yeah.
Don't know why anyone would be listening to this without spoilers anyway.
Yeah. And to be honest, I don't think we're going to explain it in a way that's going to make sense that you're watching and go, oh, right, yeah, that's what they were talking about. You would like, who the fuck is this person?
Now it's this conversation about it's going to make sense to us, let alone anyone listening to it.
Yeah.
So forget it.
Yeah. Well, I can't remember half their names, so I'll describe most of the people.
Right.
So,
well,
yeah.
Yeah, because because I've done the first season 3 times now, and the second season twice. I'm a little bit up there with the names a bit more now. It's kind of like I'm 3 seasons into Game of Thrones, you know, and I'm like, I understand who everyone is now.
Starting to figure out a bit more. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's just so convoluted. But there's definitely bits where I'm like, well, how? Like, especially in that third season, there's bits where I'm like, well, how is that person there then? Because aren't they on this bit? And it kind of got to the end, and I was like, I think that makes sense. But I'd have to go back to watch the points where I was questioning bits again to then go, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially the bit with Martha. Though when Martha's like, she dies when she's pregnant, but then there's the other version of the same version of her doing other stuff and then getting older and becoming.
That's where it started to. I was like, I needed a minute there with that reveal, because once they started revealing that, well, there's 2 versions of each timeline.
Yeah, of her and yeah, exactly.
The inside curve of the loop and the outside curve, and it's like you could send one off in one direction and the other off in another. It's a bit mind bending. It's going to take me another watch or two to really get head around it all.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like I say, I thought the third season I really enjoyed, but I do think that one thing I liked about it, especially in the first, well, more in the first two seasons, is it felt unfamiliar because it felt kind of like a foreign series, whereas I felt the last season felt a lot more sort of Hollywood, a lot more kind of, although it was still crazy convoluted and stuff, it didn't seem to have the same kind of nuance to it. I don't know, it didn't feel quite as,
Yeah, I'd say it wasn't. Maybe the third season's not as quite as grounded as season,
yeah,
1 and 2. It felt very like a foreign detective show or something very
yeah.
earthy, and then it went off the rails, and well, not off the rails, but it went apeshit in
Well,
season
that's it. Yeah, it turned into like, I mean, it's always been a sci-fi, but it was like say, it was more like a whodunit with sci-fi elements throughout
3.
the first two seasons. Whereas the third season was full balls to the wall sci-fi, like crazy time travel, fucking villains and monsters and bad guys and myths and yeah and weird stuff. And it was like, yeah, it's just there was lots of just really strange bits about it. Um, Even like the ending, I was like, well, shit, like because obviously like you see young stranger Jonas, creepy bearded, not quite Adam yet, but that guy Jonas, who's in
Yeah,
the
like
past, but then he disappears. But I'm like, surely he would continue his time to the end. But I'm like, then that world doesn't exist, though, does it? So,
now
but
they've
then
all
he
been
must
wiped
have,
out.
he must have come. Yeah, so it was one of them ones where I'm like, but they had to continue. Like it's that the whole paradox thing where I'm like, but if they're wiped out, then the versions of themselves that continue through time didn't continue through time. So it was one of them ones where I was just like, I don't fucking know.
I think because I've done a lot. Like there's a big time travel discussion I want to have, which will be at the end of this, I imagine.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, we'll work to that.
when we get to that point, to the point where we go off the rails in discussion.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, yeah. I think I had my head wrapped around quite a few of the principles that they were dealing with, like to
Mm.
kind of think I sort of got what they were going with. There were a few bits though where I was like, when they split, when Martha came into that old timey Jonas back in like
Yeah,
1800s, and he was just like, "Who the fuck are you?" Like I was just like, "Huh, okay, he's never met her." Now that's so I immediately meant right. There's two versions of Jonas then.
yeah, totally, yeah, yeah.
As the two in both worlds, and it's just
Yeah,
like,
because that's why he's. Well, I thought that
ugh.
would be because the young Jonas maybe forgot, or like his story was that like Stranger Jonas. That's like the middle one, like
Mm.
the bearded one, different actor guy. He maybe, and because something had been changed, he will no longer exist at some point or something. But because he has existed, he must exist now or something. But yeah, it wasn't really. It was
It's
just a bit
hard.
weird.
It's a bit hyperdimensional, isn't it, to kind of get your head
Yeah,
around. What I grasped is like there was two moments where like kind of in the loop, where they were saying in the loop where time pauses and that.
yes,
Just
yeah.
at the end of the
That
world.
that's the bit that made more sense towards the end, where I'm like, right, so
Mm.
that's why they've done this new. That's the loophole sort of thing. I'm like, okay, that makes sense.
The loophole, from what I gathered, was it was like it's when Martha is running in, alternate world Martha.
Mm,
It's just when Martha gets shot
yeah,
basically in front of Jonah, and then he's standing there, and in one timeline, Martha from the alternate world turns up, like end of season 2, and in the other
yeah,
version, she gets stopped outside by Bartez or whatever, and then or something in there,
yeah,
like
Bartosz, yeah.
yeah, and then instead of her appearing, Jonas gets killed in that version of it or
Yeah,
something.
exactly. Yeah. Oh, he goes underground, and that's when
Yeah, that
he
was it. Yeah,
runs down to the bottom of the house, and then he
yeah,
becomes Stranger Jonas and
the
does the whole
strange Jonas. Yeah, yeah.
Stranger.
So
Well, that's what like people have been
uh,
calling him. Because obviously in the first season he was the
stranger.
Stranger.
Yeah.
He was the that's what on
Mm.
the videos I've been watching they refer to him as
Yeah,
Stranger Jonas. I'm like, that's a good. So there's Jonas, there's Stranger Jonas, and then there's
it's
Adam
Adam.
versions of
Yeah,
Adam.
yeah,
Yeah. So I was like, okay,
yeah.
that's the three different versions of them.
And then you got. Thing is, what bothered me, what kind of freaked me a little bit out, is there was one bit where, like, obviously there was so many versions of Martha
Mm,
that I was like, oh, there's a young Martha, there's a middle Martha, and an old one. But then a second young one turned up with this
yeah,
extra scar, and
yeah,
I was
yeah.
just like, what the fuck? But then at one point when they were in Jonas's world, Martha got the scar on her face, the little scar, and it was
Yes.
it was on the opposite side of her face than the original one, because she was in the mirror world, like the opposite world. And so I thought, oh, she's another version of Martha who's got the scar on the opposite side. And then I was just like,
Oh, I didn't notice it was on the other side.
oh
That's
yeah,
quite clever.
it's when she gets it on the
Yeah,
gate.
yeah, yeah,
She goes to
yeah,
the
yeah.
friends. Yeah, that's what I mean. As soon as it happened, I was like, wait a minute, that scar was on the other side. But then I guess it's just because they'd flipped the camera around in the opposite world, hadn't they?
Yeah,
Like,
that's the opposite world, version of the thing. Yeah.
so it just appears on the opposite side, like, but it was it did throw me a little bit. Right. Also, I didn't do myself any favors because I started it quite late. I had to stop and then be on quite late.
Mhm.
I fell asleep, or I kept nodding off at about 3 a.m. or something, and it was around that episode, where it was just jumping. It was going 2017.
Yeah, it was literally like every 5 minutes. Because I was like, it was last like 3 episodes. I was like, this changed. So it's even faster and more confusing now. And who's he again? Oh yeah, that's that guy. And who's he referred to? Who's this guy? Yeah, that was pretty fucked up though.
There was like a specific episode where it just felt like, they were just going, and in 1917, this guy did this, and then fucking Jonas did this in 1952, and then fucking it was just filling in all the gaps, kind of.
Well, that's one thing I found about this series. It's like the editing of it was different from the other two. So like they had the clock thing where it's like click, 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 and it would go the different times. And they had that thing where the screen kind of like faded and then warped. And I'm like, at first I was like, right, so is that warping to a different time or a different place or a different world?
It's going to the different world. It's going to the opposite.
But then sometimes it's within the same universe. It seems to do it, and you're like, but it was like a different version. It was like this, like say it jumped from Martha to Martha or something like that. And I'm like, right, which? Like it was just really fucking confusing. It was another one of them things where I'm like, what does this mean now? What's this camera trick mean on top of the 25 other things that were already on it?
This is it. I feel like they answered all the questions. I just don't. There was just so many that I really kind of lost track.
Oh yeah.
And,
they still never answered how that guy fucked his eye up. Not once. Like even at the end they were going to, and I'm like, come on.
That's what I love it because
I hate it.
No, that's a nod to Lost, right? I was watching an interview with the fucking directors and the writer, and that they were talking about Lost and just saying they hated in Lost how Polar Bear was on the island in the first season, and then like they never answered why it was on the island till like season 5 or 6 or something. Season 5, I think.
Yeah. Once people were like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and so they were like, I don't care about this polar bear anymore. I bet you left it too long.
Yeah.
And so it was like a kind of nod to that. And it really is a sort of unimportant point that this guy had.
Oh, 100%.
It's just hilarious.
But like the whole first season, I'm like, something's going on with that guy. That guy has to be a somebody. That's like, he seems to know too much. And he seemed to be like obviously in cahoots with the power plant and stuff. Like something's going on there. And then it was like, no, nothing's going on. All right.
I loved it when I noticed that he had one arm in the alternate universe.
Yeah.
Honestly,
well, it does that bit where it zooms in on his face, doesn't it? And you're like, oh, he's got both eyes, and then it zooms out, and it's like, he's got one arm. Okay. Yeah.
It's brilliant. But I thought even from the beginning, I thought that is a genius thing to have in a time travel show. Is a guy who's got a patch, like a damaged eye, and then in season 2 he has an eye patch, and it's like you can't. It's such an unimportant point that you're gonna think, oh, that'll get answered, but it never does. And
yeah.
And I just think it deliberately didn't answer it, because it's a laugh, it's a joke, isn't it, kind of?
I think a lot of the sort of bystander characters were made really well. There seemed to be a lot of character in them.
Yeah.
A lot of the random people that would come into it, you'd be like, oh, well, who's he? And then he wouldn't be in it again. You're like, okay, fair enough. And there was weird characters like that chick who is Bartosz's daughter, Noah's sister. Oh no, yeah. Bartosz's wife. Sorry, Bartosz's wife, the woman with the scar on her face.
Yeah, Silka or something.
She's whatever her name is. Yeah, it's like Severity or something. It's some weird name I've never heard of. But the fact that she's in it and like she always seems like someone relevant. She sees Jonas go through the portal in like the first season. Yeah, at the end of the first season when he's in the future, and she's like second hand to the deaf girl, the mute girl. But it's like you don't really know who she is, and then she comes into it at the end, like, oh, that's the girl with the scar on her face, but you don't know why she's there. She kind of got sent there, and you're like, oh, what's going on there? And then she's there to have kids with him and then die, and you're like, what? And then it goes back, and you realize it's actually fucking Jonas's sister, and you're like, what? So yeah, you're just like, okay, so she had like a pre-story, then she has the apocalypse bit, and then she has a post-story, but she's not actually in the main kind of crux of the story. So yeah, it's kind of fucked up. But there was lots of weird bits, and there was lots of bits that kind of felt a bit like the bit where you see Magnus and the ginger girl, sister of the deaf girl, mute girl. I can't remember her name.
Yeah, I'm struggling on those two names.
No, I know it's Fitz something or
Charlotte's daughter.
Charlotte's daughter. Yeah, it's Fitz something in it, or like.
Francesca's the older one.
Francesca. Yeah, Francesca's the older ginger one. So her and Magnus are like in the future with Adam, but you don't really see much of them, even when they go back in time with Like,
Yeah, their story kind of trailed off big time, I
yeah,
thought.
it kind of, which was a shame because I liked their story and I liked their characters and stuff, but there
Mm.
was just too much to fit in with the new, Jonas slash fucking whatever her name is story.
I think it's kind of like they were saying, well, we've seen their story and how they got to where they are in seasons
Yeah.
1 and 2, kind of, and they were quite big in season 2.
Oh yeah, totally.
It's like now you know how they got to where they were going to old-timey Jonas era, and they just became old people then. And now it.
Well, that's it. Yeah, they just aged in the past, and then they went to the future, and they just did some random stuff for Adam to plan to stuff. But that, like, I still think like like watching it back would probably make more sense, and you probably have to find it. But there's lots of bits where they're like, "This must happen because of this," and you're like, loads of stuff like from both the original White Devil chick, the old lady,
Claudia.
Claudia, yeah, and Adam are both like, yeah, they're stupid and I'm doing the right thing, and they're stupid and I'm doing the right thing, and they're idiots, blah, blah, blah. And then stuff happens, and you're like, that makes no sense. Why would that have to happen? But it has to happen because it happened. And then you're like, at the end, she was just like, oh, everything that had to happen exactly the way it same way it happened before, which means all of this has happened exactly that way before, other than the fact that she has a conversation with him at the end, convinces Adam to kind of go, oh yeah, send Jonas to the third world. I was like, come on.
Prime or the origin world, whatever. Yeah.
I liked the fact, like, because like obviously time travel, you'd expect it to be like sort of like alternate realities. It changes the past, and so the future changes, sort of thing. Like, and so there's different realities and stuff. Whereas it didn't really like the whole point of the whole series is that you can't create a different reality within yours. You can't travel back in time and create a different reality. So it kind of got away from the multi-dimensional thing, because you think in most times travel stories it'd be like Back to the Future, like where it's like everything he does in the past affects the present and then all right the future sort of thing.
So I'll talk about this in a minute, mate. It's called
the
Novikov self-consistency principle.
Yeah, right.
Talk about it in a minute.
That's cool. But I liked the fact that on this one they didn't do that. They just made it like there was three world, or there was a world that split in half. Like there is only one in originally. There's only one in the universe that the original world exists in. There's only one universe, one timeline. But because of something he did, he created two worlds that were made of that. So it was like two halves of the whole. I liked that because it made it like, because otherwise by the time you get to the end, you'd be like, well, there could be 45 different timelines then if that's the case. But the way that like the rules they used for it was quite good. I liked the fact they used them rules for it.
Yeah, they simplified it, and like that's what I think I like about the ending is.
The last thing I would say about this series is it's remotely simplified, but yes, they did simplify. Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
True. Like I like that the ending was fairly simple, given that the rest of it has been so complicated. That they go, right, well now all the complications out the way. This is the ending, and it's simple. It's like we just have to do this. And I like that because it makes sense, and it doesn't leave you going, huh, what, or disappointed in any way.
No, yeah, it did. It felt. I'd say the only thing from all three series really that I didn't really like, because it didn't really fit with it and there was no kind of precursor to it, was the bit when they're in that time tunnel.
Yeah, I was going to mention that
thing, and they see younger versions of themselves, and they're both like, "Oh, I remember that," and you're like, what the fuck's that got to do with anything? Like I can understand if they saw something like that, like when they've been having the nightmares and stuff, if they kept on seeing something like that throughout it, that would have made more sense as like a payoff to it at the end. But it kind of it was kind of like they had an idea, but it wasn't flushed out throughout the rest of the series. If that makes sense. It just didn't. I don't know the point of it. It didn't have any relevance to it.
Yeah, just that I found that whole tunnel bit quite jarring in general, because it didn't look like anything else in the series.
Yeah.
At all. Yeah, it looked quite shit, actually, I thought. When they were first standing there, I just thought, ugh. But I accept it at the end. I get what they were trying to say. I mean, how else are you supposed to visualize a hyperdimensional time between
Oh
space
yeah,
and
it doesn't feel like the series has a massive, like, gigantic Game of Thrones type budget anyway. You know what I mean? Like the CGI in it is quite good, but it's minimum a lot of time, and reused 1,000 times. You know what I mean? Like the apocalypse is reused 10 times in the series. Just like that one bit of CGI from the building. You're like, okay, that's all it needed.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like it fully delivered on what I expected of Mute Girl and Noah either. I felt like that story would have been flushed out a bit more, whereas it kind of just felt like it fit into an episode, whereas I thought that most of the series would be set future with their sort of storyline and with flashbacks to like, I didn't actually know what to expect, but I don't know, I just thought that would maybe get flushed out because she was there with the dad gets killed, then she's with Noah, and then they dig a hole. I also didn't understand why they were digging that hole again and making the passage again, because what difference did it make to them? But obviously, in the original version of the story, whatever it would have been, that would have made relevance to Noah then traveling back in time and stuff. But it was just a bit weird. It was like there was lots of stuff that was set up like Noah was the massive character in number 2 in season 2, and then like a passing character in season 3. There was lots of that stuff where I'm like, we'd already seen their story. I expected to see more of it, but we'd already seen pretty much the fruition of it. So it was kind of like a backwards. It's just really weird. Some of the bits that kind of, I'd love to see it like chronologically. like a character chronologically.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say then. It's like, I think because with Noah, it's like you've seen him almost his story backwards
Yeah.
or out of order.
Mm.
So you've seen his death, and this is like almost this season was like his beginnings.
Yeah.
You've seen part of his beginnings at the same time as his death. It's weird. It's like because he crossed his own path so many times.
Yeah.
Hard to show that linearly. It would be kind of interesting to see a story of any of these characters. Just someone like Noah, for example, just like you saw original Jonas. Like if it just followed original Jonas all the way through it.
Yeah. Or even if they just did, I was thinking if they just started in 1910 and you saw that bit of the thing, and then the next bit of it, like you saw stories based in each area. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it wouldn't make any sense whatsoever because they'd be having conversations that they've yet to have in the future. So it wouldn't make any,
I don't even know how they managed to just construct this show, and then not only the story, and then actually put that story across as a script, and then transform it into edited,
Oh yeah.
video.
It's a masterclass of writing, masterclass. Like, and like, I'm nothing I've ever seen of like the quality of the writing in it. It was insane.
And but that's what I mean. But that's what I mean. The quality of not only just the writing, dialogue, acting.
Yeah, not the dialogue, but yeah, like the script. Yeah, like the
everything, like the cinematography, everything, the editing, the whole thing. But right down to the absolute execution and plotting of the entire thing. It's like you have to be a genius to plot this thing, let alone have all these other skills to actually execute it perfectly like it did.
Well, I think I think you need to write it, but I think that the actual filming of it would probably be the same as filming anything, because most films are filmed unchronologically. They're not filmed chronologically. You film scenes at a time anyway, don't you? So that sort of aspect. But the actual writing of it, I think, just fuck knows how they would do that.
I think the filming as well, though, like, had a very sort of Nolan-esque sort of look to it, and obviously editing style, because it's obviously the chronology. Nolan likes to fuck with that shit, doesn't he?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it does have a feel of Nolan, actually. Yeah, it does have that sort of nuance to it.
Something I started feeling as I was watching it again this time around, and I thought, yeah, it does feel a bit Nolan-y. Maybe because I'd watched Inception maybe about a week and a half ago again, and it sort of made me feel like,
Yeah, it does have a bit of that actually, and there's kind of long shots that are kind of to deliver sort of emotion rather than necessarily just action at any time and stuff. Because it is quite a slow series.
I was going to say that it is one thing I was thinking. It's like if they just hurried up with how much time would have been saved if like Jonas had just answered every question he was asked immediately instead of just staring at them for
there was quite a few bits like that. And why didn't they just go, look, like with Jonas, and like there was a bit where she was like, well, if you go in there and only one world can survive. And like for me, I'd be like, well, in Jonas's original world, it's fucked. And like if only one world can survive, his world is fucked anyway. Like people are dead, and and like it doesn't feel like although I liked the ending because I liked them two drifting off into the smoker stuff. Then I was thinking about it, I'm like, when they went to the world and there's like that table, it's like Magnus, like, so obviously Michael doesn't exist, so Jonas doesn't exist, but Michael himself wouldn't exist because his dad wouldn't exist because his dad is the son of fucking Bartosz's kids or something in it. Also like that, I was like, none of like half the characters that had anyone that traveled in time, other than people sat around that table, no one else really existed. You know what I mean? Because Magnus,
that's what the ending was.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's just like the whole idea they've been arguing is like, it doesn't matter if I die because my world will live. I'm like, well, some of them, but no one you care about. Like none of his friends are alive anymore.
This is what I mean. It does feel like they decided, we're happy to be erased. Martha and Thingy, and even Claudia. The Claudia that existed at that point, they were happy to be erased, but it's like, you're fucking erasing like 20 people here as well on top of you,
Oh, at least. At least, yeah.
They just decided that shit. But then I suppose that's what the Hannah thing at the end was. She was kind of saying, "Oh, it felt good. Felt happy that it was black and it was over."
Oh, yeah,
'Cause they
there
were
was
all,
the darkness
they
had
were all
gone,
trapped.
sort of thing. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. It's what's his name? Adriana. Oh, fucking hell, what's his name? The Ariadne. It's like they're all trapped in the maze though, and that's the thing. That they're like, so it's torture.
Yes, yeah. So it's like infinite. Like, yeah,
It's the play Martha was doing in season one.
yeah.
Like the
Oh, really? How was it? Oh, is that the
and
reference?
interestingly enough, that is the name of the woman in Inception. You know, the girl who designs all the mazes. What's her name? Kitty.
All right.
It's her name in that, and she
Her name's Adriana.
Ariadne, and she designs the mazes.
That's quite interesting.
Story of Ariadne, mythology. Yeah, you know, in the play.
Didn't know that. That's a nice
Mm.
little tie-in. Cool.
Loads of symbolism.
There's lots of characters in it that you just like I didn't fully like. I say, I think part of it's to do with it's a German thing and their kind of sensibilities and stuff. But in like the American or like the Hollywood style of making stuff, there would be lots of people in there that wouldn't like their characters felt too real because they were a bit moany and a bit weak, and they weren't like hero characters. There was no real hero characters in it. Even the dude that went back in time and got put in a mental institution guy, he wasn't a hero character. He was a bad guy, really. He was like, I'm going to go and kill everybody. Like, but he was the most kind of action-packed hero-y guy. No one in it. I mean, Jonas, even Stranger Jonas, wasn't like a badass. He was just a wimpy. Like the amount of time Jonas cries in this film, I'm just like, come on, man up, man! You were time traveling, fucking dude.
I was going to say that it's like they stood there like opposite each other, Aaron and Martha, for most of the final season, just crying, like
just crying at each other. Yeah. Just one tear just going down the eyes each time. Just one, just going down the cheek.
Severely dehydrated during the filming of these shows. Like
there must have been a lot of like, oh, it's another cry scene. Let's go pinch myself. Yeah. There was some weird bits, and there was weird setups that didn't really like. So in the season 2, when you're looking at the cop's wife that becomes a lesbian with the other one, and she says she ran away from a priest, and her son had loads of burns on his arm, and you're like, oh, that must be his mom or the priest, and it was neither of those. He was just in like fostering. I'm just like, what? It was just one of those things where I'm like, what?
I think that's what the show was about. It was kind of like it set up a bunch of things. Like even the guy, the power plant owner, or the guy who runs the power plant who had the gun. It's like,
yep.
You thought, oh, he's definitely going to be something, but no, he was just a guy that come to the place.
Just a guy that happened to run into this situation. Because that's another thing. It's like, so the kid that with the burns on his arms, he doesn't exist anymore because his mom won't exist because Bartosz didn't go back in time, and Bartosz's daughter, wasn't it, was his mom.
Yeah.
So he doesn't exist anymore anyway. And that's the thing. It's like it'd be interesting to go through it at the end and just figure out who's no longer around, like who no longer like. I bet the people around that table were all that was left.
Yes. Well, I think that's what they were saying. I think that's what it actually is. I was trying to look at the table and think, well, all those people were separate from everyone else,
outside the loop. Yeah.
They just got embroiled in it. And like Peter came to the there and married Charlotte and all this. He actually just did turn up that day.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's what it was saying. It was like there was no one else. Although, it did make me think, how the fuck did Regina exist? Because I was sure that because I thought that Tronte was going to be like because Claudio had an affair with him in the 80s. That guy with the moustache.
Yeah.
He was like the older version of the kid Tronte, wasn't he? And they were sort of alluding that he was the father of Regina.
But that's why she said something like, "I'm glad it wasn't yours" or something. Yeah.
The other guy, the older power plant guy, the guy from the wheelchair, that was the father apparently.
Oh yeah.
Seen like a photo of it at the end.
Yeah. That's what I mean. A lot of it is just visual stuff. You have to pick something up. Like you have to watch like I said to Gil, it's worth watching, but you have to put your phone down. Like those times where I pick my phone up, I'm like, no, I have to pay attention to this shit. I like put my phone back down. I'm like, just focus. Just stop getting distracted by your phone. Yeah, it was
main reason
more than any series I've ever watched.
Yes, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, it is the most complicated season I've watched, and it's required the most brain power, and that's what I think has impressed me the most about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one of the reasons why I had to watch a dubbed version at this point.
Oh, 100%. There's no way I could watch it subtitled. Not a chance. I wouldn't have been able to follow it. No way.
Forget it.
No way.
Yeah.
Not a chance. No way. I don't know how anybody could. I don't know even the most intelligent, best readers on the planet could follow that and read the fucking subtitles. No way.
There's so much symbolism and shit going on, and it's so good to look at. But yeah, I don't want to be reading subtitles, but it's one thing to watch something simple with subtitles, but this is too complicated. I need my eyes.
Yeah, yeah. And like I say, you need to pick up a picture or a passing phrase that somebody says. You can't just take in and be like, oh yeah, that's just irrelevant. Nothing like even the boring scenes were like intense. You know what I mean? Like I'd finish the thing and I'd go up and have a smoke. Like, right, so he said this to him. So what does that mean? It has to mean something because he said something. Yeah, it was just really, really fucking weird.
I think it's a masterpiece, personally.
I think it's great. I think it's amazing, and the fact that it's 3 seasons is perfect. Like and 8 episodes in each season. There was no fillers. I mean, there was lots of like crying and slow, like monotony in it, but that was kind of like the realism in it. It was just life, It was just life going on. What did I see that was? Oh, that was another thing. That fucking chick that goes back in time to save Mikhail, his mom, goes back in time to save him, and then gets killed by her own mother.
Yeah.
And then leaves that necklace on the thing, and that necklace is the thing that ties in the whole thing. And I was just like, what the fuck? So she dies? So all of that was for naught. Like her and her husband's struggle were for nothing at all. Like for absolutely zero gain.
That's what I think the whole thing is. It's like, yeah, they were trapped in hell. It's an endless loop of hell, of torture.
That's interesting.
And they had to end it for everyone.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
It is a bit like...
It's the maze.
Because Helena talks about that, how like some people's lives work out and some people don't. And it's fact that like her life seems to work out at the end. And it's like the fact that no one was involved in it other than the people that were supposed to be. She was too tied into the loop, and so that made her life pulled into hell with it, even though she wasn't part of hell, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So fucking weird, but interesting though. Super interesting.
I think the show will pick up pace now. I think now it's finished. I think all the fans have watched it now. People who are like dead into it like me. I think it'll pick up pace on Netflix now. I think a lot of people will hear about it and they go, you know what? It's only 3 seasons. I'll give it a go.
I see. I'm not sure because I don't think most people would sit through it. As an avid season watcher, I struggle to sit through it. You know what I mean? Like to sit through it. And I don't think you could watch it a week apart. You know what I mean? So you'd have to watch it like I did. I feel like that was the best way to watch it all in one go. Just get through it and get to the end and go, right. So now I think I understand what's going on.
Potentially 3 seasons, though, is enough for people to just go, even outside the comfort zone, and go, I'll just give it a go this week.
Yeah, so what, 26 episodes, isn't it? So, yeah.
Yeah, last week of the lockdown
hours.
or something.
Yeah.
But either way.
But, yeah, very, very interesting series. Well delivered, good acting. I mean, obviously, I heard the voice acting, but the people acting looked good. I don't know what they sounded like in German, but I'm sure it was good.
We'll say they did sound better in German because I had watched the first season, obviously, and
yeah, I started watching the first season in subtitles, and it sounded more kind of, more energetic sort of thing.
There was one bit in this season that I did notice, and it was during old-timey Jonas, Stranger Jonas, like when he was shouting at someone, and it looked like he was proper shouting out,
screaming, like,
and he was just like, "Hey, why didn't you say this to me? What are you doing here?" Like, it was just dead.
Yeah, totally. There was a few bits like that in the second season with Mikhail's dad, when he's like screaming at people and he's like, please stop doing that. Like, I don't think that's what he says. I'm sure there was some nuance lost in the translation as well.
Yeah.
Like there was a few bits when they say something. I also think, I'm not sure, but it seemed to me watching it back to back that in the third season, the voice actor for Martha was different. For young Martha, it seems like her voice changed a little bit. And like the first time I started talking, I'm like, that doesn't sound like her. But it might just be my brain just, trying to pick up.
I think I've got a problem with like voice acting. It's like I'm all right with like characters in an animation or something, but when it's a dub like this, I struggle to kind of remember what the voices sound like for each person.
Yeah.
It's dead strange. I'll be all right if I'm watching the dub though. Yeah, the subtitle.
Yeah. But yeah, just watching it back to back, obviously I watched it literally like a day apart, 2 and 3, so it was still fresh. But yeah, it just sounded slightly different. And but yeah, there was weird bits, and the mirror universe was weird as well. Like the things they like the fact that Mute Girl's sister was then mute, and I'm like, why? Like why would that be different? There was stuff I was like, I get like like him losing an arm rather than losing an eye. Yeah, but it's a mirror. But like, why would surely then it wouldn't necessarily be that. Yeah, but everyone would be mute if that was the mirror, though, wouldn't it?
No, but the twins, one of them was mute, then the other one is is deaf and mute like instead in that universe, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, but they're not twins. It was just one of them things where I'm like,
Suppose,
why
yeah.
is that the opposite? You know, like, but it didn't take anything away from it, and it did also, like, I noticed in the third season that she doesn't really talk much as the older version of her either. You know what I mean? Like, and I was like, is that the older version of her, or is that the older version of the mute version of her? You know, like, but it never, like, it didn't like add to it. It didn't say anything about it, but I was just like, it seems that she's not talked yet. Like, is that a thing? Am I supposed to notice that? And the bits, another thing that kind of threw me a bit is when they kept going back to Adam/Eve's palace thing with the paint, the pictures on the walls with the fire, like the different levels of burnt and decrepit. I'm like, so which time are we in? Like, when did this happen? Like, it just felt like some of the bits where I'm just like, is that out of order, or is that like, I didn't quite follow exactly where things were and stuff.
I'm almost certain they haven't made the mistake. Like,
Oh
I'm
no, I
sure,
agree.
like,
I agree. I agree. Yeah.
yeah, I think, yeah. But I started noticing that as well and thinking, okay, so that tells you what sort of time period they're in. You know, they're very late in the game. They're sort of, I don't know. I didn't connect what stage of burnt, was at what.
Yeah.
Though, so I really didn't have a clue. Could have been.
And it didn't like fully make sense with Jonas and Martha's child why there was the it looked cool, but why there was like the three different versions all following each other around. Because I'm like, surely they'd exist in certain times rather than just like they get taken and then they'll all exist in there, because like at some point there must have just been one version of them traveling through time rather than all three versions of them traveling through time.
It's in a loop, though, isn't it? So they've always been all there.
Yeah,
they?
but there must have been the beginning to the loop where they weren't all
That's the
there.
point. But there isn't a beginning to the loop, is there? That's the point.
I know, but yeah, that makes another bootstrap paradox, though, doesn't it? It's just a weird thing where I'm just like, why do they all exist? Like, it didn't really explain it. I'm like, I get the fact that I just went with it. It just went, all right.
I just think of it like, just along the line, like, and they're just like the kid at the beginning, the middle, and the old man at the end. But they can all move through time, and they can all go and be collected from somewhere else in time by other people. So it's like they can all just be hanging around together constantly. It doesn't matter, does it? Like, the kid will always grow into the middle one, and then the middle one will always end up aging into the older one.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
Kind of a head-wrecking idea, like, but yeah.
Yeah. No. It was just a weird little thing. But I felt like that character was kind of obsolete in this season because he seemed to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But it was just like it'd cut to him and he'd kill somebody and then disappear, and then it would cut off him, and then an hour later it'd cut to him and he'd kill somebody or do something and then it'd fuck off again. You're like, what's the point of this guy? Like, surely anybody could have done that.
Well,
It's just
I get it.
to add that sort of extra character.
I think it was just like he's going around kind of, because he wrote the book, didn't he, that everyone was operating
Yeah.
from.
Yeah.
So it's like he's basically just made sure that he always exists. That's what I got.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And obviously he had allies in Eva because they all, and Adam at certain points, because they all wanted the thing to exist, to carry on forever, didn't they?
Oh, it took me ages to figure out who was working for who. Like, and even at the end, I'm like, but why was Martha working for Adam at one point when she had the cut under her eye, but before she had the scar over her other eye? But then, like, she's not actually working with them; she's working with Eva because she's part of Eva. But then I'm like, fuck happened there? And that was the bit where he was also killing the other version, like where she had her in a cage and then she's doing something else. I'm like, so when does she become this thing? I'm like, oh, she doesn't. She gets killed in the thing, and then she exists already over there. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck is going on. Yeah, the third season was rough.
Yeah, I think the problem is you got like people, you got them that they all had different motivations at different points, and then in their timeline, and then it seemed like Adam, before he became Adam, like, didn't want the thing to. He was constantly trying to destroy it, and then only when he becomes sort of older Adam, fucked up Adam, does he actually want to keep the timeline going when he realizes it and understands it more.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird. They all had like different motivations through different periods, and that's always a bit head-wrecking.
No, I thought that was quite good. I thought it delivered on that quite well in this season with Martha, especially because obviously the bit where she kills Jonas like earlier on, and then you realize why and stuff like that.
I thought it was very Martha heavy this season because
very heavy, yeah, totally.
Just because because we hadn't been introduced to her side of the story, like the Eva side of it.
Yeah.
Seen 2 seasons worth of Jonas becoming Adam, pretty much.
Do you think that was to do with like the writing? Like they wrote the second season and then went, now what the fuck do we do? I feel like that. I don't feel like this season more than the other two felt like they didn't have the plot for it. You know what I mean? Before they finished the second season,
Well,
it didn't feel like it flowed perfectly into it. Go on.
I was watching an interview with them, and they said that like the original idea they had for the show's ending, they got bored of as they got halfway through it. Like,
Right.
you know, and then they sort of went, nah, we've got a better idea, and then they changed, and like kind of, you know, it still worked. Obviously, I guess it
Yeah.
didn't deviate too far. Like, but I guess that's where they came up with, let's do the mirror universe where it's this, that's this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It
probably,
did feel like they had to go one further each season, and so the
Yeah.
third season got really fucking like, let's go all in with all the crazy fucking bollocks.
I think if you kind of looked at it, let's imagine you watched it backwards, you know, you'd be like, well, you'd see the Martha side of it first, and she'd be the main character, and then the second season would be like as it is, you know, now the middle season, but it would be very much Martha and Jonas together, sort of doing things, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
well, not obviously Martha was quite a lead in the second season in trying to find out what was going on while Jonas was missing.
Yeah.
And then obviously the first season was all Jonas, so it's almost like a mirror of itself, isn't it? It's the three universes.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. Yeah. It is.
It's quite a symbolic series. Like, you know, there's a lot of
Oh, I mean, the actual like religious aspect of it. There's loads of like, you know, birth and rebirth and death and fucking disappearing and magic and, you know, weird shit. But yeah, there was strange aspects of it, especially when they went to Martha's universe, and obviously the door was different, like had different writing on it or whatever.
Yeah, to let there be light.
Yeah, like they were like, yeah, exactly, and being the opposite and stuff. But yeah, like I say, it was really good. I would have to watch it again, but there was aspects of it where I'm like obviously he has a circular light that he carries around with him, and then they give him kind of a rectangular light in that season. But then that character that has that dies, and you're like, oh, okay. Because I was like, why haven't we seen that then? Surely we'd have seen it in one of the other thing, and then he dies, and you're like, all right, that's why I haven't seen it. Okay.
I think they were very
all right.
yeah, they're very clever in doing things like that, just to give you little
Yeah.
visual clues of who you're actually watching. You know, and I think on other rewatches, you'll start noticing things like that and go, that's why I could kind of sort of follow it, but I didn't know.
Yeah. Otherwise, it would be impossible to follow. It's like the bits with Martha. It's like she gets cut so many times on her face, but like, because you obviously see the two versions of her that are both the same age with two different like slices, and you're like, why she got that? And it happens just so you know who it is. Like that's all it seems to be. It's like, you know, Eva cuts her face just to say like, now we know you're different from that one, so you know that, you know, you're this next version of that one now, and so you know you're going to do this thing because you've seen yourself do it. You know you're going to shoot Jonas. But yeah, it was one of them ones where you're like, why the fuck did she do that to her? Like, she's doing that to herself. Why?
I think I put that down to being like one of the, you know, because the way Jonas added the substance to the barrel in one of the timelines, I think it's like because they could add little tiny changes throughout the timelines. They couldn't change the stream, but they could add little drops to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably one of the drops. You know, she was like, well, if I end up with this fucking scar, so this is what happens.
Yeah,
it's one of the things at some point, maybe she didn't have the scar, you know, and then she changed it. So she now has to live with the scar forever. And it gets them a little inch closer to doing whatever they need to do.
Yeah, to becoming the end result sort of thing.
That's kind of the way I saw it. They kept making changes.
I'd have liked to see the point where Jonas became Adam, like the fucked up, scarred face and stuff, because they say obviously like he's changed from traveling, but you don't actually see him travel at any point as Stranger Jonas. Like you don't see him travel from the past, even though obviously he does because, you know, he exists. And also like it doesn't ever really fully explain where, or like maybe it does, I don't know, but like, you know, Jonas, like Stranger Jonas, when he first comes and takes Mikhail, you never see him do that. You know what I mean? Like, but like Michael or whatever he is by then says that he does it, but you never see him do it. And in that story, he never does. Like, you never see him do it. What, take Michael?
Yeah, it was young Jonas, wasn't it?
Yeah, but that's what I mean. When does that happen? That never happens in the thing. Like when young Jonas takes him into the past.
Yeah, it does. It happens in season 1. It gets explained, but you've got to take him, like, and then Michael goes, when he goes to see when he tries to stop his dad from killing himself.
Yeah.
He goes, well, I never understood. His dad, Mikhail says, well, you took me through the tunnel. And then they have that flashback to him helping him. He goes, and then takes him through and says, wait here in the cave till morning. And then when he wakes up, he was gone.
Oh, he does, doesn't he? Yeah.
He comes out the cave and he was in the 80s and he was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it does happen.
That's what I mean.
That's what I mean. There's so much stuff where like I'll question it at the time, and then it might get like thingy, but I'm still like, did that get resolved? I can't remember.
That's my point. It's like, so much happened that I'm pretty sure everything got answered, but I couldn't keep track of it all.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. I think even watching it again, I'd still be like, wait a minute, does that finish off? Does that bit get resolved?
Especially, like I said, in that episode where it was jumping back and forth through different. It was a little scene and it was in years that we'd never even. It was just like 1974. It's like a year you've never even
they
seen.
didn't seem to stick to their own rules in this one. Like the first two set up the rules of it's 33 years apart, except if you were super far in the future, in which case you can time travel.
They weren't traveling to those years. It was just showing you what was happening in those in-between years. Like I thought, so it made sense to me. But I kind of, like I said, I think I nodded off a couple of times during that period, and I kind of was like, oh shit. And then I kept having to jump back to bits that I remembered. So I'm pretty sure I missed a few scenes. So I've got
probably. There's probably one or two bits you're gonna
pretty cloudy. That's that episode. To be fair.
But also, it's like if Stranger Jonas went back to 1910 or whatever it was and created the time machine that's used in the future, then he can then jump between any time anyway. So it's sort of like the rules don't exist for him, and by that point anyway,
because he doesn't.
Therefore, don't exist for Adam.
Because that machine wasn't limited to the 33 year
to the rule. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I think.
I mean, fucked up season.
One of the things that got me is that I didn't really get Claudia's loop. It's like, because she, from when you see her getting killed, and even Adam was like, what the fuck, I saw you get killed, you should be dead. Like, I don't understand that bit. It's like, so is there two Claudias then, like there was two Adams and two
I don't think there was. I think because she can jump between the worlds, and she can obviously use the time as however she wants to as well, then she died after that point. Like
that's what I mean.
yeah.
Then, no, I suppose because she could die after that point, but she's changed it enough that she can now have this conversation with Adam.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. I think she's like, because I mean, she could have jumped there to talk to Adam at the end, where after she died, at any point before she died. You know what I mean? So it could have happened, and then she jumps back and lets Noah kill her. You know what I mean? Like between that bit and the point where when Adam saves Jonas and then does all that stuff, she jumps back, lets herself die, and then knows that the loop's going to continue. But then obviously you see her disappear at the end, don't you? So at some point, like after talking to Adam in the future, after she's died, she then jumps back to the point where she's died. That's what I was thinking. And then lets herself be killed.
She doesn't have to though, because like that conversation's never happened, has it?
Yeah, but she did die to make this story. Like it still has to continue in the same way.
Yeah, no, that's what you're saying. Yeah, if that happened after, then she has the conversation, convinces Adam to make that change himself, and to take Jonas to the other world, and then she can just go, well, I'll go back and get killed, and I'll just wait until we all just get erased.
Yeah, exactly, and everything just gets erased anyway. So I think, I mean, or she could jump to 1910 and just wait for 20 years, another 10 years. Like, I mean, she has infinite sort of possibilities. I think is this kind of.
She probably never needs to turn up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Yeah,
it's so fucking weird.
That's what I mean.
It's so fucking head wrecking.
It's and that's what I loved about it. I think though is there's very rarely been a show that's engaged me in this way. I think Lost is probably the closest.
Yeah, early Lost. 1 or 2 are Lost. Yeah. Early Lost. Yeah.
Before you realise this is going off the rails big time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I like this because they banged it out, and it wasn't like they didn't give it time to sort of get its own hype up, and then Game of Thrones had to deliver on that ending because everyone in the world was like waiting for them to do it.
Well, also this wasn't drawn out. This wasn't like, we can make another season, so we'll right, because that's the thing. It's like fans are going to watch this and be like, oh man, I wish there was another season, which I understand, but I think it would have had like diminishing returns. You know what I mean? So you can't even. You see an advance from the first to the second, but there's a massive jump to the third because it's like you couldn't do the second season style again. You couldn't just do story and context. You had to go, right, now you're going to get it all, and this is going to be like, because that's the one thing I quite liked about it, is that third season made you realize that no one could explain it. You know, I mean, like, so when they're like, what happens next, and how do I save her, and he's like, just do this. You know, just tell them like how to get there, but they're never going to get there, because, you know, you couldn't be like, right, so on this day if you did this thing, and I'm going to talk to you about this, and at that point I'm at this point in my life, so you won't know this. You know what I mean? It's like, it just get too, like, you couldn't explain it fully to anybody. So a lot of the explanation is just do this, and then you'll find your way to where you need to be.
I think the struggle I found with a lot of it is there was just a lot of people lying as well.
Oh, yeah.
Just, I was lying to get you to do this.
Bullshitting from start to finish. Yeah. And over and over again. Like Jonas even says it, it's like, I keep doing the same thing. It's like they lie to me and I just do what they tell me to. I still end up like to get in the way to do what they ask me to do. Even if I try and do something different, the same thing happens anyway. So it's like, just fucking do it. You know? But yeah, the idea that Jonas is a pawn to himself the whole way through the series is quite good. I think they could have also left the reveal of Jonas a little bit longer, but I suppose that was the big bit in the second season. And obviously, as soon as you see Eva, you're like, well, that's her. You know, that's Martha. But yeah, it's super fucking weird. It's super weird, like mega odd series. Interesting though.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. I just think, yeah. I mean, like I said, I think it's one of the most captivating series I've seen in a long time. And
oh yeah, and completely original. Like, I know it's time travel and stuff, but like for the actual way they delivered it, not like any fucking time travel alternate dimension series I've seen. There was some aspects that were the same, but a lot of it was extremely different from anything I'd watched in that sort of genre before. So I like that. I liked that about it. I thought it was really interesting and unique, but super confusing.
Yeah, I'm trying to think now if there's anything else really.
Yeah, I can't think of anything specific with it.
Did like
I say, there's still characters I'm not sure who they were. You know, like I'll go back to somebody, I'm like, oh yeah. It's like in the third season they flick back to the lady with the mole on her face. That was Michael's mom, wasn't it?
Venus.
Yeah, but like they flick back to her and she's doing something. I'm like, who's she again? Because she's in a bed with a man or something like that, or she's like having a conversation with like what you think it might be a husband or something like that, or somebody. I'm like, who is she again? And they obviously use a name, but the names for me, like say, after about half an hour, I'm like, I give up on the names. So there was some bits where I'm like, what? Who's that again? And I just like, come back, or they'll explain it.
there was like, yeah, because there's like they'd mentioned. She was Innes Cornwall.
Yeah, she was married, wasn't she, beforehand? Yeah.
Yeah, to like a Daniel Cornwall, and he worked in the police department. But I don't know if you ever saw him as a character. But he was mentioned. So. He was mentioned, and he was also on the family tree. You know, like when Jonas gets shot in front of Martha, like he falls on the floor in front of the double tree thing.
Oh, is he on front of the tree? Is he? Oh,
yeah, so he was on that.
Interesting.
And like. It was mentioned at some point.
Again, it would have been explained, but there was lots of bits where I'm like, I missed that. I'll come back round. Or they'll explain it again. If it was important, they'll explain it again. And there was lots of bits there that they didn't. I'm like, oh, it can't have been that relevant at the time. I'm sure it has some sort of tie into why these people have got this motivation to do this or that. Fucking crazy season.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if like you ever saw him as a character, that Daniel Cornwall, because he said. There's so many characters and so many angles to the series that it's like struggle to sort of keep track if they even appeared, some of them.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. Or if they did, with what relevance and when they died, and so on and so forth. And what timeline? There's some bits where I'm like, right, which timeline is this? So that person was, so that little ginger kid she's a kid at this point because that's her mom. No, that's her, and her daughter is this one who becomes that. Like especially with the what's her name?
I think it was more difficult the further back in time you go, like kind of, and you get to like
it was.
You get to like the Tronte sort of.
Yeah. When it goes, because it goes back even like when they went back to when. Is it Jonas? Yeah, Jonas jumps all the way back in time and meets Noah for the first time, and I'm just like, who the fuck are these people? And you see Noah and you see that little girl, and I'm like, who's that little girl? And then I was like, oh, that's his sister, who's fucking whatever's mom, who's the lesbian chick. That's the lesbian chick. like, okay, right, cool. Like everyone had a bit for me. I was like, okay. Like the first season was like, so there's Yellow Jacket, and then there's the Black Jacket guy who's Yellow Jackets, because I couldn't remember Jonas. I had to just keep like Jonas Brothers, right? So Jonas is the Yellow Jacket, and then there's like the dark version of the Yellow Jacket, which is the Stranger, and then and so I had to like kind of figure out who everyone was, like coming up with sort of monikers for them so I can remember them, like the investigator or whatever it is, whether they call him when he's in fucking prison. That was a lot of story. Yeah, Inspector. Yeah, that was a lot of story for somebody who gets left in prison for 40 years. You know what I mean? Like all that setup for him to lose, you know what I mean, and his wife to lose, and Hannah to go back and insult him and then lose. You know, it was there was all these bits where you're just like, this is going somewhere, and then it doesn't. You know. But yeah, it was quite, because obviously otherwise we'd known that there was a breakout in the night and blah blah blah. You know what I mean? Like, because that's when she died. I'm like, of course she dies, because there was never anyone broke out of an insane asylum in that year, and you know we never see Michael get back. And so if he got out, then Michael would have got back, and that would have changed the history, which means that it didn't happen and blah blah blah. So yeah, but you don't realize it at the time because you're invested in it. But yeah, insane, absolutely insane.
Yeah.
I tell you what, how they cast people to look so similar, I don't know, because they genuinely, 90% of them genuinely looked like older versions of themselves.
It has got potentially some of the best casting I've ever seen in a TV show or anything really. I mean, yeah, it's like you do think something like Ulrich, kid version of Ulrich, the middle one, the old man. It's like that's they may as well be the same guy. They definitely actually invented time travel just to fucking cast these people.
Just that guy, yeah.
In this show.
I thought the same with Magnus as well. Like old Magnus looks like young Magnus's older brother. You know, like or it might be their dads. You know what I mean? Like, 'cause I was thinking that, I was like, maybe it's just their family tree. You know, like maybe it's just their dad. And like, you can play this one. We're just going to dye your hair the same color as this. Like,
maybe that's why sometimes they never said anything. The older people, because or like certain type of characters never said anything
because they're not German.
No, they were just the actual parents of the actors. They just fucking weren't actors.
What? Yeah, that's a good point.
Like older Francesca, was she just Francesca's actual mother, like in real life? She never speaks.
Or just somebody who looked like her who just didn't speak German. You know, what I mean, she's like from Russia or something. She's like, we'll just put you in it. You don't have to speak. Don't worry about it. Like we may have you say goodbye, mother, at some point, but that's it. It's really interesting. How many of them had to learn sign language? That's what I don't know. like half the cast fucking speak sign language, and yeah, it's fucking. But I do feel like I suppose there's not many black people in it, but like most kind of like there's a lot of diversity in it.
Are there any black people in it?
There's not anybody. Now I think about it, I can't think of one, but it is Germany. I mean, come on, it's Germany, fuck's sake. But there's lots of there's people who are disabled, there's people without arms, there's people that are mute, there's people doing sign language stuff. There's lots of interesting sort of like modern sort of sensibilities in it without making it feel like any of it was thumbed in, you know what I mean, like kind of just put in there without reason or rhyme or whatever.
I did think there were some bits where like kind of some characters they'd been focused on quite a lot, like Charlotte, for example, was focused on quite a lot in season 2. You know, her finding out that her daughter was her mother and all this sort of shit.
Yeah.
And then at the end of season 2, she just goes to the future, and you barely ever really saw that version of Charlotte again. She just got involved in the whole going back in time, setting things right narrative.
Yeah, and kidnapping her own daughter and stuff.
And it shifted. That's it, and it shifted straight onto like pretty much alternate Charlotte, wouldn't it? After that.
Yeah, true.
But then I guess I think that's the whole aim of the show. It's like saying, well, look, these people had a life, and then they got involved in this, and that was it. They were just locked in.
And they're drawn into it. And also, again, you've seen their stories. You know what I mean? Like you've seen it from like you might not have seen what they were doing at a certain time, but you've seen them in a time doing something. You know what I mean? Or seen their lead up to because that's the thing. It's like because the world ends in the present. Yeah. And the future's kind of irrelevant for story. You know what I mean? The only thing is them going back to then do the present, but they've already done that in our version of the story. So,
well, what it seems like to me, it feels like the future stuff. There's not really much, like you said, much story going on because they're really just sitting around in a horrible wasteland waiting to fucking get back time to actually
for 33 years as well. You know what I mean? Like for some of them, they're waiting there until either the next loop bit or they're waiting for Adam.
Yeah, because that's the thing that didn't. That's the thing that didn't get me, like I struggled to understand, is because there was obviously Adam had the ability to send people wherever, but they all still operated from like, well, today's whatever date it was, you know, in back in like
Yeah, it was always an exact time compared to them.
whatever date it was back in like the old time or whatever, like 1986. Then they'd go, well, this is the date that it is in the future, because we could only go 33 years. So I don't understand why Adam was sticking to that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if the 33-year rules remained, even because obviously they had 33 years to the specific day from when it was invented. Whereas I thought he maybe still had 33 years, but it wasn't until. But then he doesn't do always 33 years, does he? I don't know, mate.
That's what I mean. I'm not sure. Did Eva's machine do the same thing or what? Like, because it's weird.
Yeah, fuck knows.
Then, and where did did struggle to understand where the sphere came from.
Well, in the because I watched like an explained thing about like the second season, and they were saying that because when he shows him the board and he's like from the past.
Oh yeah, they designed another version.
That was on the board.
Keeps evolving.
Time.
Yeah, it keeps evolving.
So in the future that was created, and then somehow that was taken. It's probably something to do with fucking the White Devil chick that one or something. I don't know if that was fully explained or whether it was just an alternate reality version of it, and maybe because they found the loophole and so they could use that in the loophole compared to the normal machine. I don't know. Fuck knows. I didn't go that far. I didn't question that. I was just like, okay, there's a new machine. It's a different universe, new machine.
I think I remember it now. Like they said every time it goes around the loop, they keep adding to it things, and they can eventually create.
Yeah, it's an evolution to it.
New versions of the machine, like the kind of, yeah. So yeah, I think I do remember that now.
I'm not sure. Yeah. I can't remember. But no, I thought it was good. I thought, like I say, there was some very strange bits. I did like the fact that to solve the day, all they did is turn up on a road and just like go home to that guy, and he's like, okay, and that was it. So that's all they had to do is just turn up on that road at that time when that guy's driving home it's just about to crash, and just say go home. He's like, all right. But weirdly enough, I thought those two, when you first see the picture of those two, like the inventor, the time traveling machine inventor's kids, or kid and granddaughter and stuff that died. Yeah. When you first saw a picture of them, they look familiar. Like I was looking at them, I'm like, who's that then? Who are they? Like that looks a bit like Magnus. Could that be like? And that one looks a bit like Martha. I was just like, they both looked like other characters in the thing. So I'm like, is that just somebody that's gonna be like? But it wasn't. It wasn't anybody specific at all.
Yeah, that was a struggle because you didn't really see a good look at the photo, and so it left you going, wait a minute. Is that like Noah with long hair or something?
Yeah, it looked like somebody like that. It was like, is that somebody that we're meant to like? And again, obviously, you're questioning everything you look at every time. Like anytime there's a room full of fucking crazy Charlie work on the wall, then you're just like, what's on that thing? Oh, what's this thing over there? What's that? What does that say? There wasn't translations for everything as well, so you're reading stuff like, I don't know what that says. I bet in German that would give me some clue. Yes, fucking like I say, great season, real good. Glad I watched it. Taxed my brain a lot, but I think that was a good thing. I think that's positive.
Like I was saying to you, it's annoying that I've never had anyone to talk to about it over the whole like season 1 and 2. It's like literally don't know anyone who's watched this damn show. And it's like two people, like I said, who I would discuss it with. It would be you or another mate, Dennis, and like who are really sort of the same level geek sort of people as me.
Yeah.
Neither of you had seen it, and I was just like, for fuck's sake.
Honestly, I'm glad I didn't watch it that second season until the third one came out, because I would have hated to go back and watch season 2 and just to understand. Like I like doing it this way, like doing it all in a one, because I think I'd have been like, I remember some of this, and like the first season was good, but like I think the second season was a lot easier to kind of take in. I felt the second season was a bit more kind of user friendly. It didn't feel like I was quite as confused as like that first season, because even watching it the second time, the first season, I'm like, right, so what's going on again, and what the fuck? And it kind of got to the end of the season.
I think you're just distracted by the fact that you actually didn't know the characters in the beginning of season 1, because I think when I went back to watch it, it doesn't feel that way to me, because I know the characters, or I knew them anyway, and I didn't know obviously the ending.
Yeah.
In season 2, and so I had to go back to watch season 1 again.
Yeah. I suppose there is that. Yeah. I suppose there is that aspect of it. But yeah, I just thought like season 2 was just a bit more like I was a bit more up to speed, and it was a bit easier to kind of go into and understand. And then obviously go straight into season 3. There's definitely bits I missed about season 2, I'm sure I missed some nuance and bits and pieces, but I do feel like season 2 was a setup for the
That's what I'm
world that
saying.
would have, but it was a world that would have existed rather than the world that did exist. So it was like season 2 set this status quo up, which on the last minute of that episode, on the last episode, was then changed. So even like watching season 2, it was kind of, you had to watch it because you had to see what was happening at these certain points in time. But season 3 was like, yeah, forget all of that stuff. That doesn't happen anymore. It does still happen, but like you need to know it, but it's not relevant anymore. You know, like, there's lots of bits in there where I'm like, right, okay. And it was more about like Jonas becoming, you know, like less of a wimpy, girly Jonas that can't even kiss a girl to like saving the world Jonas.
Yeah, because what I thought was quite strange is that like middle Stranger Jonas sort of just became redundant, really.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
like he was always on a path to becoming Adam, and it was all about young Jonas doing stuff
Yeah.
and getting things. That's where it needed to be fixed.
See, that's why I thought when Noah was going to shoot Adam, and Adam was like, you still don't understand the rules yet, blah blah blah. I assumed that Stranger Jonas would have seen Adam die, and so he knows by the time he becomes Adam that that's not how he dies, and that's how he knows Noah can't kill him.
Right.
But he didn't. That's not what happens at all. He just like doesn't die, or like, you know, at the end of the loop he dies or whatever. But like the old Jonas doesn't know how old Jonas dies unless he sees it as a younger version of himself. You know what I mean? Like so how he knew he couldn't die at that point, I don't know. Because even if he'd gone through the loop a lot of times, he's still just that version of himself in this loop.
Right. Yeah. This is what I was going to talk about with the principles.
Okay.
Anyway, that was the end of our Dark discussion. We pretty much trail off and start talking about general time travel and space and stuff like that. So I've split that up and put into another video. Because basically, if you haven't seen Dark and you're going to watch that and have Dark spoiled for you. So it seemed like a sensible decision. And I'm all about making sensible choices when it comes to time travel. Otherwise, you could cause a paradox. Anyway, I've been Dan. He's been Chris. It's been Word of the Horde. That was That Famous Podcast Extract. I've got to think of a better name for all these things. That's a really hard sentence to say. Too many that's. Anyway, I should probably end this now. Thank you.